All right, guys, we have went through the absolute best horror movies of 2024. I gave you two lists, a lot more lists coming, but we're going to jump into the absolute worst of 2024 horror-wise. So anyway, let's get into it. What's up, guys? It is that time. We always talk about the best, but, we have to talk about the absolute worst. I always have fun doing these too, as well, even though one problem I think I have with the worst is oftentimes they are forgettable, like, because I just want to get them out of my brain as quick as possible. So I'm not going to go back and rewatch these. But, some of these I might not remember as well as others, but I will do my best. But I do remember that they were complete shit. Be sure to check out my previous two videos that I just put out for the best. Put a lot of work into those. I got more top 10s coming after this. I think like 2 or 3 more. So yeah, it's sweeps, baby. That's what I call it. It's end of year sweeps. A lot of fun to be had. And also, I think maybe the first couple of movies that I tell you about, I might not necessarily really dislike them or even hate them. I might actually kind of like them, because I do avoid bad movies like the plague. But anyway, let's get into it. I'm going to give you one honorable mention. Number 11 is going to be Apartment 7A. And I think you could file this under this wasn't really necessary. Let's make a prequel to one of the most iconic horror films of all time, Rosemary's Baby. And, I got to give the production design team credit here. Yeah, it looks amazing. The work that they did, you definitely feel transported back into the 60s, which is cool. But, this covers the story of the young woman that Rosemary met in the laundry room. But I think they give her a different occupation. I don't think it was stressed that she was a dancer in the original. She was more of a drug addict. I guess they go a different route with this one. You got some fine performances here, especially by Julie Garner. But overall, again, there was nothing that jumped out at you. There was no real shock value like the original had to it. It just felt more like paint by the numbers and kind of forgettable, unfortunately. Number 10 is Imaginary. And now you might remember close to the beginning of the year when this came out, I gave it a decent review and I haven't watched it since, but I think there was some good stuff in this, but it definitely suffers from a lot of those Blumhouse tropes that we get every year with these movies. Stock acting, the story doesn't really send it home, but I do like the creativity in this movie, especially in the second half, because boy, the first half of this movie was just so freaking generic, especially the boyfriend. Really, that guy? Talk about one of the most forgettable throwaway characters I've ever seen. So this movie, I think I'm somewhere in the middle with it. I think luckily the second half offers some interesting ideas, but still, at the end of the day, not the greatest. Number 9, Night Swim, another one that I think maybe some people were too hard on this one. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. I even like the whole ghost in the swimming pool aspect. And I will say, as far as scares go, there is one scene in this movie with the young teenage girl in the pool that got me. I thought it was very well executed. But unfortunately, the whole movie, a scare can't make up for the whole movie. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I like the atmosphere of it. But again, I think it suffers from just very generic characters throughout. It does feel like a Blumhouse type of movie. I think they could have ramped up the artistic value of it, I guess. And look, I don't want every movie to be like freaking A24. Just entertain me. And I think this one was somewhat entertaining, but it was nothing to write home about. Number 8, Werewolves. I think this was one of the most disappointing because I do love a good werewolf flick, and I think the trailer looked promising. It looked like cheesy fun, kind of The Purge mixed with werewolves, and it's always cool to see Frank Grillo. And I do like that they used practical werewolves, but you know what? I'm going to be fair and grade it, and visually, I didn't think the look of the werewolves was anything to write home about. I think at certain angles benefited them, but when you're looking at them dead on, they look kind of silly. And overall, I just didn't think it had enough R-rated werewolf action like it should have. I think the last act wasn't anything original. I think it was borrowing heavily from other movies like 30 Days of Night. So yeah, again, another one that was just a really big disappointment. Okay, number 7, and I think here's where we're really diving into the really bad and Time Cut. And the only favor I can give this movie is that it did predate Totally Killer. But man, if you compare those two movies, Totally Killer is so much better, so much more creative, and really, most importantly, so much more fun. This movie just felt so bland, and everybody was just phoning it in, and none of the time travel stuff was interesting at all. And I usually am a sucker for good time travel movies. The time machine was just kind of in a barn, and they don't really like explain it at all. And plus, you know, we're not going back to like the 80s or the 70s or even like the 60s. We're going back to 2001, which kind of feels like today, fashion-wise. Plus, you got two sisters in the movie, too, and one of them looks like she's 2 feet taller than the other one. And for some reason, that bothered me. It was kind of superficial, but it did. Number 6, The Exorcism. Now, here's the thing about, I guess, exorcism movies. They tend to be either really, really great or just flat out atrocious. And there's rarely any in-betweens with these types of movies. You know, a straight up exorcism type of movie. You can have like demonic elements, you know, like say Longlegs is laced with demonic type stuff, but it's more about a serial killer. But I think you really get yourself in trouble when you just want to focus on a priest and an exorcism, because there's really nothing new brought to the table. And really the only thing that is kind of new to this is that it takes place on a film set. It involves an actor, that being Russell Crowe, which it is an actor kind of in his later years, kind of art imitating life. But this one was just kind of boring. And if I'm looking at my watch, or I guess my phone, for the time in a movie, because I saw this in the theater, then that's not a good sign. You know, I need you to be immersive. I need you to transport me into a world and keep me guessing, keep me interested, and this one just didn't do that. I'll just go and rewatch The Exorcist like I always do with these movies. Number 5, Trap. Oh my God, this movie was so freaking frustrating. Look, I love a good, really it's more of a criminal type movie than a serial killer. All we see on the serial killer side of things, I think, is, you know, him looking at his phone and he's, you know, keeping an eye on his victim. But this is a script that M. Night Shyamalan wrote that's trying so desperately to be thought-provoking and interesting and creative and smart. And it's just none of those things. You can easily pick apart every step of the way in this. And you know what? I do grant suspension of disbelief in most movies. I'm not the type of guy that just picks apart every freaking movie. But you got to at least get me halfway there. And if I'm rolling my eyes and I don't even realize that I'm doing it, then that's a problem. Another thing is, like with the actors in M. Night Shyamalan's movies, it tends to either be really charming and fun, or it can be kind of annoying and taking me out of the movie. And there was a lot of that in this, especially with M. Night's daughter. This movie focuses way too hard on his daughter, and that'd be fine if she was like a Naomi Scott and she was, you know, such a fantastic actor, but she is atrocious. She is a horrible actress, and putting herself in a situation like that, she didn't seem like she was scared at all. There's a video that yourmoviesucks.org put out. It's 10 seconds long, and it's called quote unquote acting, and it has her in it.
I'm gonna talk to your dad for a second. BRB.
Rachel, listen to me. Your husband is the butcher. Hoover is the butcher.
Oh shit, this lady Raven.
Help me.
And the comments are just freaking gold. So if you get a chance, go check that out. But it kind of sums up my thoughts overall about this movie. The only good thing I can say about this is Josh Hartnett. It's always fun to see him back at it, but he's the least problem of this movie. One thing I do notice too, M. Night does have, you know, a fan base that they are obsessed with him. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm obsessed with, like, I guess, John Carpenter. But even I can acknowledge that John Carpenter has put out some duds. But with M. Night, I do notice that, and I know I'm like pointing fingers at people here, and that's fine. Like what you like. I liked Halloween Ends. I get it. He can do no wrong to some of his fans out there, and that I think that's a good topic for a separate video. Forgiveness with fans of certain actors or directors, and we will like tolerate anything that they do. Luckily, I'm kind of middle of the road with M. Night. You know, I look at him as any other director. He's done some great things. He's done some horrible things. Trap is horrible. Speaking of horrible, number 4, Strangers Chapter 1. Oh boy, this movie is already set up to be a trilogy. I think all 3 movies are filmed. We had a trailer for part 2, which did look interesting, but trailers can often be deceiving. But this first movie was so unimaginative. It really brought nothing new to the table. It's a straight up bland, watered down remake of the original, which has so much more in the way of teeth. This one has gums. That's all it has. There's nothing original or fun about this movie at all. The young couple, they have no chemistry whatsoever. And they make really, 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 really stupid decisions. I'm the guy that's usually pretty forgiving with dumb decisions in horror movies, especially when you have a masked killer chasing you. But even I have to admit that some of the decisions in this movie were laughable. Absolutely laughable. So how they can pick up the pieces and give us a much better second movie, even if the second movie is better, this first movie, there's nothing saving it. There's nothing that makes this movie better. It's just a really bad movie. Number 3, Watchers. This is the one directed by M. Night Shyamalan's other daughter. And I think this did have some cool ideas. I think visually it was enticing. You got Dakota Fanning coming in here, but it's another one where it's kind of set in one location and there's these weird rules that are set up, as often you see in Shyamalan's movies. And look, I give her credit for the attempt at world building here. I wanted to saw my own head off watching this movie because it was so freaking dry and bland. It's cool to come up with new ideas, but make them interesting. And this one didn't. And then it does have a last act that goes a direction that some might like because it is a surprise. I did not see it coming whatsoever, but I guess it just wasn't my bag. I wasn't into the direction that this movie was going in the last act, and it was one of those like, oh, they're doing that? Number 3 is Tarot. I almost switched this one with number 2. This was almost my least favorite, but I think number 2 and number 1 are so damn close that I'll just leave it as is. Tarot was this one of the first movies that came out this year? I can't remember if it was or not, but this was another one of those, is this a Blumhouse movie? It might be. It feels like a Blumhouse movie. It's got like all the character traits of a Blumhouse cast. And then I'm going to cheat a little. This you can file this under what I wanted. I hate using that in terms of criticizing a movie because what I want shouldn't matter as far as if the movie's good or not. But some decisions are so stupid and preposterous. You know, take for example Chad living in Scream 6, okay? That's what I'm getting at here. That was really stupid. So I'm not saying that happened in this movie, but it was just a different character decision. At the very end of the movie, a character pops up and I was just rolling my eyes like, are you kidding me? Are you like really? Like, do I even care if that guy lives? Didn't even mention the CGI jump scares that these movies constantly have. I just realized I didn't mention that one time in this list, and usually that's one of my biggest problems. But I guess the other problems with all these movies outweighed the scares. You know, none of them were scary, but this one just attempted those cliche jump scares with tons of CGI throughout. It's a shame too because I do like the idea of, you know, tarot cards and forming a cool little horror movie out of that. Like, you know, like Talk to Me. Not that had to do with tarot cards, but I think Talk to Me took a really cool idea of just an object and a game around the object and formed a movie out of it. A horror movie, and I think it worked very well. That was one of the best movies of that year, but this was one of the worst. And then number 1, Afraid, and this is the AI horror movie. Blumhouse occupies a lot of real estate in these lists, unfortunately. There wasn't a single scare in this movie. You can't really even call this a horror movie. This was more kind of like family drama type stuff. The AI device, like they could have just used an Alexa and called it whatever they called it in this movie, but it looked like this freaking honeycomb globe looking thing that looked like it was from like the 60s. It didn't have a modern look. And look, guys, that I am picking this movie apart. That is by far the least of this movie's problems. I'll even say this. They tried to make the trailer for this movie look like more of a horror movie. And there are scenes in the trailer, I believe, that aren't even in this movie. So this was like watching paint dry. That's what this movie was like. And it didn't help, going back to the trailer, that this was that, one of 1,000 trailers these days that we hear that had that boom, that cadence throughout the trailer, starts off slow and then boom, and it just keeps going faster and faster and faster. And then you got the, and every trailer kind of does this, but I just hate that the boom. So freaking stupid. I wanted to throw pickles at the screen, and that's just the trailer, okay? But the movie was worse than the trailer, okay? So should that drive the point home about how much I fucking hated this movie? Boom. Oh my God, we did it. So yeah, guys, that is my top 10 worst movies of 2024, worst horror movies. And I knew I would get some bad ones out of here, even though this was, I've said this many times, one of the best years in horror that I've ever seen. You still had some stinkers. You always have some stinkers, and I'm sure there's going to be stinkers for 2025. All right, so yeah, post down in the comments the ones that you hated. If you liked any of these movies, God bless you. I'm so glad you enjoyed these movies. Tell me why you enjoyed it in the comments. Tell me why I'm wrong, okay? Because I could be wrong. Some of these movies could be really great, okay? But yeah, let me know down in the comments, all right? Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free for Fridays. Follow my Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Drumdum out.